Hello, welcome to the episode podcast. We're back again to talk more TNA wrestling shenanigans, and today I want to ask you guys actually a question. Do you guys think that there are some wrestlers that are predispositioned to certain roles or positions? Now, I think that there are some wrestlers that are predisposed to certain roles and certain positions, i.e., mostly being a heel or mostly being a babyface. You know, you can sort of have a little bit of nuance out there and have some other things going on, but usually when you're talking about like different positions or different aspects in wrestling, usually you're talking about whether somebody's heel or whether they're a babyface. So I think a lot of wrestlers can be good at both, and if you are very good at both, then that's really good. I think The Rock is really good at being a babyface and being a heel. You know, we've seen him over the last few years have great babyface runs and great heel runs. He's obviously had some ones that are just like, that was there or whatever else it was. But he certainly had some really good ones. I don't think Steve Austin really was that great of a heel, especially after he kind of turned into that babyface that everyone kind of loved. So I don't know, like he was an okay heel before that as well. Like he was like certainly like in his early Stone Cold days, I think he was a pretty decent heel, but I don't think many people actually felt like he was a heel. I think a lot of people still were behind him because they kind of liked this guy that didn't talk any nonsense and just, you know, wanted to get to the point. And it was a new character that kind of was on the edge, and that was kind of what people were looking for. People were kind of looking for something different, not the Hulk Hogan smiling babyface thing anymore. They wanted something a bit different, and Steve kind of fit that role. So I think he was really great babyface. I don't know if you can talk about John Cena, but like I think John was mostly a pretty alright babyface. I'm not a huge Cena fan or whatever, but like obviously he's done a lot of great work and whatnot in his time. Obviously, again, there's obviously still also work that I go, what was this or whatever, and like, you know, WWE, specifically Vince and whatnot, over-pushed him and overutilized him and over-relied on him to a certain point and whatnot. You know, so that is something that, you know, is kind of like one of those things where, you know, when CM Punk came along, I think that was like maybe like because you're talking about like, well, we don't know that, like, who else is he going to go up against kind of thing. You've still got to have that John Cena to your CM Punk kind of thing. You know what I mean? You've still got to have that, I don't want to say bland, but kind of more bland babyface, the corporate choice. And that, I think that time was actually the time that you could have turned him heel as well, because like a lot of the audience had already turned against him for a while, and like, again, like this was the perfect time, perfect sort of set of stories to kind of start saying, okay, let's transition him into more of a role of, you know, he's got to put everyone else over. Yes, he'll win some matches and win the belt sometimes or whatever else it is, but now he'll do it and he'll put somebody else over after a few months or whatever it is. Because that, you know, realistically, that was his role. He like, or should have been his role to help elevate the next generation of superstars. Because you finally got, you know, some talent that are finally getting over, and you're sort of somewhat trusting of them to carry the ship. And Cena's getting older and getting more into Hollywood and whatnot, or starting to get into Hollywood around that time, and things like that. So it's like, yeah, you know, we're going to see this guy do this thing and come back and whatever, and he's going to be here and he's going to do the thing that we want to see him do, or whatever it is. So again, yeah, like it's one of those things of saying he fits into that role, like, or he fitted into that role mostly. Like I think Triple H fits into that role of just being the heel so much and fits in there so well. I think like he had a couple of okay babyface runs, but like honestly, most of them were like somewhat overshadowed in some ways, in some forms. Like when he was on SmackDown, he was pretty overshadowed by Jeff Hardy, and he was almost more playing a heel. He was kind of playing a nice heel in some ways, but like he was still like I still feel like a lot of people were like, "We don't care about you, Triple H. You were cool for a while, and you're kind of being kind of nice right now, but." You know, I think a lot of people still remember the Reign of Terror and things like that at that time, even though, you know, he'd had that big DX reunion and whatnot, and all of that stuff had happened and whatnot. But now it's like, you've won this title and we want to see Jeff Hardy. So I think people more wanted Hunter to lean into being more of a heel, more of an asshole, that sort of thing, so Jeff could really be the best babyface and could get over properly, rather than being just, you know, a little bit of tension between them to see, because like I think most people were like going for Jeff, absolutely. So I just think that, you know, like you're trying to hinder Jeff by saying, oh well, we're going to put you against this babyface Triple H, instead of saying, yeah, we'll put it on some heel, or we'll put it on Triple H, but he'll be heel. You know, that I think that was like really overshadowed. Not to say that he couldn't do babyface work or whatever, but I think he fitted much more into that. Obviously, I don't want to just talk about WWE, but like it's super easy to talk about WWE because there's just so many like easy examples, I guess, like Hulk Hogan, for better or worse, fit into that babyface role, even though a lot of, you know, like later on, people started going, this guy again, even if you were tuning in for like only tuning in for like WrestleMania or SummerSlam or whatever. If you started saying, oh man, he did the same basic things last year for like 3 years running, like, or 4 years running, or whatever it was, you know, it starts becoming like, am I really into this guy, or is it, you know, or what is it that, you know, is it being force fed on me? You know, is the company kind of force feeding that on me? And do I want somebody else? Or who do I like, and why do I like them, or what draws me to somebody else, or whatever it is. I think like the Ultimate Warrior was probably one of the first true ones that sort of competed with Hulk Hogan on terms of like pure popularity. Even though I'm not a huge Hogan or Warrior fan or whatever, but still, like, he actually did get to compete like with Hogan in terms of that. And I think that like, I don't know whether like some of the reports of Hulk, like, because like Hulk makes so many stories, that he was going to turn heel on Warrior or whatever. I think that would have been great if he had done it, because like I think at that, like I said, at that time it was like, dude, you know, everyone's wanting change, everyone's wanting something new. Hogan's kind of seen as the old hand here. It's kind of time to move on and look for somebody else to lead the pack. We knew eventually we knew Warrior wasn't going to be it, because he was sort of quote unquote a flash in the pan, so to speak. And then you see like a few years later when Hogan goes to WCW, he feels that role of being a heel there more so than he does being a babyface. He's still in that babyface role early on for like, I think it's a year. Absolutely terrible run over there. Like some of the most goofy, ridiculous stuff that they ever did with Hogan at that time period, and especially like their Starcade, like the first Starcade that he was part of. I don't know whether you should have just built to Flair versus Hogan at Starcade. I don't know, for the first time match, because it was like, it was a bit silly for Hogan to win it in his first match, like proper match, like without, like, he did have some build, obviously, but it was still one of those things of like, we should have built this up for at least a couple of months, and Starcade was only like a couple of months away anyway, so it's like, that's what we're doing, that's where we're going, whatever. This is going to be the payoff. This is going to be, something big, something special, and it's really going to draw a big gate, and we're going to have a big arena, and we're going to go all out. Like, I think that's what they should have done. Or even if they had have said, oh, well, the rematch is going to be at, Starcade. It's not going to, or whatever. But they just like, here's Brutus Barber Beefcake, basically, from the WWE, who was, a perennial, like, mid-carder, like like it's Hogan on top, so it was a draw in some ways, but it's like, what the hell was this, like, but yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people, like Flair, you talk about being one of the biggest heels in the business ever. Like, he obviously did some babyface stuff here and there. I think his babyface match against Vader is one of the best ones, because it's like, it's really believable because of Vader, because Vader is big and strong and, unstoppable effectively, and all of this, and Flair's selling in that and whatnot, and the fact, what's on the line, and everything, and the location of it. I think it makes for Flair to be the perfect baby face, so that was a great one, of him being a babyface. But I think those moments of him being a really great babyface are kind of few and far between. I think he was way better at being a heel. I think people wanted to see, Flair and Steamboat. They wanted to see Flair and Sting. They, like, in the early days, perhaps you wanted to see Flair and Dusty and whatnot. These sorts of things, or Magnum TA, like, and a few other people that, came and went, Kerry Von Erich and whatnot. These other people that were kind of in and out, like, and whatnot. Like, but yeah, obviously, like, Sting, one of the biggest baby faces ever, like, obviously predisputed to that role. And I think one of the things that kept him, like, so, like, I don't know whether you say in the hearts of people or what, but, like, so, like, not sympathetic, but sort of, like, so tied to that, and so almost no matter what, was like, that people maybe felt like, even if Sting did something bad, perhaps he knows kind of something we don't know, or whatever. And there was always like, was this really like a heel turn? Even like, I believe he sort of did it, like, in WCW once, and then in TNA once, or maybe it was a couple of times here or there, or whatever it was, I think, where it was like, wait, what's going on here? He just attacked this other person. And it was like, people were kind of confused or whatever. But it was like, Sting was saying, I haven't changed. And he didn't really change. He kept, he kept doing a lot of the same stuff, which, didn't really help him in some ways, because if you're meant to be the heel, then you're meant to be the heel. But if you're meant to be, like, the face, then it's like, you've got to make it revealed, that this was justified, or whatever it was. But the thing is, the face can't really do that. You know what I mean? The face has got to be the one that gets turned on, or gets shafted, or whatever. It can't be the babyface kind of seeking premature justice, so to speak, or whatnot. That sort of thing. The baby, even if they know somebody is not good, or in theory know that they're not good, or don't trust them, or whatever else it is, if you have to keep saying, well, I don't trust you, we've got history together and all of this sort of stuff, or whatever, I know what you did, and all that sort of stuff. You've got to keep that idea going. And then eventually, even though, the whole trope of we get to fool Sting again was a long running trope even way before that, with the Four Horsemen and whatnot. Again, you could look at groups saying, hey, the Four Horsemen, they were mostly predisposed to being heels. You couldn't, like, they had a couple of babyface runs. I think the 97 run where they're against the NWO, they're pretty much baby faces because they were one of the few, like, factions that could kind of almost go against the NWO, that were kind of representing WCW and whatnot. So, but yeah, so that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about guys and gals as well. I don't want to just miss out on the girls. Like, let's talk about perhaps Charlotte. I don't know whether you want to talk about this because it's like I already talked about Flair, but she fits into the same, like, spot. I think you can't really push her to be that big of a baby face. I feel like she's much more like on that heel side for the most part, and that's where she shines and whatnot. Like, if you're looking for like ODB, she's great babyface. I think she was always better as a babyface. I think Gail mostly was like better as a babyface, but she had some really great heel stuff as well. Mickey, always great babyface, I think, pretty much. Like, her early stuff against Trish, that was kind of cool and kind of interesting heel work there, really. But, like, I think after that, you really had her as a great babyface. And I don't know whether that worked, but, like, certainly her hardcore country stuff and whatnot, that worked out pretty well. And whatnot. So, like, there are obviously, I think, people that, I think Orton is a heel. Like, if I see Orton, like, on TV or on a pay-per-view, this is what I mean. This is why I'm sort of saying this. Like, if you're tuning in and you know a guy or you know a girl, like The Miz or whatever, if you're tuning in and you're seeing them as the opposite role of what you predispose to think that they are, like, going to be, then it's sort of this big disconnect of going, wait, what? The Miz is a babyface or whatever? What the heck is going on here? And it's sort of like, you don't really ever get into it because, like, you're always so used to that character, that person being on the other side of the spectrum, so to speak. So it's like, oh man, what is this garbage? Like, what am I watching here? Why am I seeing, this person be given this treatment as a babyface or as a heel or whatever, and you're going, this is just not working. Like, yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, AJ, I think, like, he's had some amazing, like, babyface and heel runs. So, like, there are some people that are kind of, like, you could say, oh, but he had some better babyface stuff, I think, or people remember, like, or want to feel like he's more of a babyface or whatever, especially now, like, he's looking to retire, I think. People want to look at him in that light more so than remember, oh yeah, he had that great heel run at this point or whatever. I think, like, especially that is like, oh yes, he certainly had all those great heel runs and whatnot as well, but, like, people mostly remember him for being a babyface. You could take that for, like, literally anyone. Like, they might have had some, like, babyface runs or whatever else, but realistically it was the heel runs or whatever it was, or vice versa, that really got them, like, into the crowd's mind and into their psyche of, okay, this person is a great, babyface or a great heel. Like, or this is just what they do, like, or at a certain point, again, when you get, like, Hulk Hogan or something, or somebody like that, like Cena, like a bunch of people, at a certain point, it's like, time to do something different, time to throw things at the wall and see what sticks or whatever, because like we've got this new fresh load of talent, coming in. So again, you've got to get those guys over, and like somebody like Daniel Bryan is going to be like, was more beloved than somebody like Cena at that time, even with like CM Punk being a big heel. A lot of like, especially a lot of older fans gravitated towards Punk because they were like, yeah, I'm sick of the way this company's going. I'm sick of like them, not pushing the younger talent or not giving the younger talent a go or whatever else it is, and still going with, the same few guys that they have been. But yeah, so that's my discussion here to say, what do you guys think? Who do you turn on wrestling and go, yeah, I expect these people to be heel or face or whatever, and then when you see them in the other role, you go and scratch your head and you go, what the heck is going on with this person being, whatever, babyface or heel? Why is this person heel? They're better babyface or whatever. Or, yeah, whatever. Vice versa again. So that's what I want to hear from you guys at the end of this, because I've talked about like a few people here and whatnot that I go, oh, yes, they've done this or they've done that. But most people would, consider some of these people, like Flair or both the Flairs, I guess, as heels more so. But obviously you can still think about like, obviously Rick's like WrestleMania match and being a great babyface and whatever and all of that stuff or whatnot, and having a few great moments and things like that as well, over the years and whatnot. So it's an emotional thing. Seeing this person who you've probably seen for who knows how long finally retire. Like, he tried to retire like several times, I think, or he basically retired several times, I think, over the years. Same with like Terry Funk. He tried to retire several times over the years or whatever it was. It was a running joke about Flair and Terry not retiring for a long time, and whatnot. And like, I don't know whether you'd make the same joke about Foley not retiring, but he was like obviously more of a one big match return type guy most of the time or whatever. So I think that people accepted that he did return or didn't stay retired mostly or whatever it was, because they still liked Mick, and it was like, oh yes, most of the time it was a few years later or whatever it was that he had one big last match or whatever it was, though that here and there he did have some runs there, and it was like, wait a minute, what's going on here, with this or whatever. So it's a bit weird sometimes to think about those things or whatever. But anyway, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this one, and I hope you will join me again in another one.